Hi, welcome to the Profit Builder video series. I'm Vicki Suter, your host, and I'm the author of the book, The Profit Bleed, How Managing Margin Can Save Your Contracting Business. And these videos are all about helping you grow a more sustainably successful contracting business. And for over 25 years, I've been helping contractors increase their profits, generate more time in their day, and reclaim and refine the joy in what they do again. And that's what this video series is all about. And my goal is to help give you the thinking to be able to understand how to do that in your business. And then I actually give you tools and resources that help you implement what it is the video is talking about. So I hope you enjoy today's Profit Builder video. Welcome back to another episode of the Profit Builder. Today, my guest is Todd Liles with Service Excellence Training, and I'm super excited to have Todd here today because his company is all about how do you develop training programs, how do you deliver training to contractors to help them improve their systems and their processes within their business. So welcome, Todd. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Vicki. It's my pleasure to be here and spend some time with you and your audience today as a guest.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your expertise. And before we launch in, would you just tell people a little bit about you and about your company and what you guys do? And then we'll launch into kind of the questions I have for you.
That'd be great. I founded Service Excellence Training 9 years ago. And when I founded it, I just wanted to do training a little bit differently. I've got a background in training and specifically in the trades. And one of the things that I felt was missing was more of a concern for the actual student. I felt like some training companies were more concerned about, revenue and profits and numbers and not necessarily direct results of the student. So everything that I've done here as a company has always been about how can I make sure that the student succeeds. So everything that we've done is built around that. We even sometimes to a fault to our business, right? We build our programs around touching individuals and making radical transformation in their lives, not scalability. But I think that's where our power comes in because we have such a personal one-on-one connection with our clients.
Nice. I asked Todd to be a guest on today's blog because this whole topic of training our teams and building organizations where we can produce consistent results with people, there's the one element of it, which is how do I build systems and processes? But then as we also know that you get people from different companies, different backgrounds, or you have people who you want to advance up within your company. Right. You want to train them in your methodology or your way or your philosophy or your system or structure. Right. And what I have found, and this is what, Todd's expertise is that when if we've never done training before, that we don't necessarily have a system or a structure around how to do that. Mm-hmm. And in today's day and age when it's really hard to find people who come skilled and with those qualifications, and there's a more limited pool of people out there. It's even more, the burden is on us as employers and managers to develop and train our teams. So this is really why I asked Todd to be here today, and I think that you're going to get a lot from this. So I'm just going to jump in my first question here, Todd, to you, which is, what are the keys to a successful team training program? What do you see are the keys, and maybe even just give listeners like the top 3 things that are essential elements to that?
All right. And I think that we can answer that really well for you. So one of the first things that every company has to do, and I think that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, if you're selling hamburgers or if you're serving patients in a hospital or if you're in the trades, is that you have to have a really well-defined reason. And this is really, really critical. It's your core values or your guiding principles, your why, whatever buzzword you like, you got to have that as a foundation because culture is built upon that. And by the way, I think it's a perfectly fine reason if a company says the reason why we're here is to make money. I don't think there's anything unethical about companies' reasons to make money. But in today's society, most people want to have another reason beyond that. They want that kind of ethical drive. What's the mission? So step number one is you have to just sit down, and before you can start leading people, they got to know where you're going. So a big part of training is, what are we doing? Why are we doing it?
Oh, as I would say, for the sake of what are you doing it, right?
Yeah,
Got to be some context around it. So it totally makes sense.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And for us, I'm in a different room, but in our front room, we've got our 8 guiding principles on the wall, and they're centered around people. So define your principles, because once you do, that will actually guide your training. You're like, okay, I know the why we're training. So it becomes, let's say if your purpose is to improve the health and comfort of the people you serve. Maybe you're an air conditioning company, maybe you're a plumbing company. But when you go and you do a training session and you have a new product that cleans the water or cleans the air or makes the electricity safer for small children, then the reason you're training is because this is speaking to your mission. And I think that people buy into those concepts way more than what we realize. So that's number one, have a real good core reason. Number two is that once you have your reasons established, you still have to have very clearly defined expectations. And what I have found is that these expectations, often they're referred to as KPIs, key performance indicators. We use that terminology here. We also use KRA, also referred to as a key result area. Key result area, every result area can have a KPI attached to it. So you have to define clear expectations. And then when you start having your reason why, which is about improving someone's life or whatever your company reason is, and then you start having KPIs, which is to say, yes, we're going to train on this subject, and we're not going to stop training on this subject until lives are better. And the only way that we know lives are better is that we can say how many lives got converted, which is about tracking it, right? And that's the part that people don't necessarily like. But the reality of it is, and this kind of drops to the other thing, is that you cannot have accountability if you are not measuring expectation against a major reason. So you got to have a reason. You got to have defined expectations, because people have to know what they're playing for. They got to know when they win. These are like finish lines.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in and add something to what you're talking about here, because this is where one of the reasons why I really liked when Todd and I started talking about what he does and about their work and his philosophy and how he comes at this, because one of the things that I talk a lot with people about, and is the focus of my work also, is how do you build teams that take accountability? Mm-hmm. Well, you've got to define with people, which is what you're talking about defining the key performance results within a position agreement with a team. And I use a word a little bit differently than expectations. I actually use the word agreements, so that you have buy-in in that accountability. Because expectations connotes a whole different thing in people's psyche. But how do you get really clear about what that accountability is? What are those results? Because that's where, one of the things I say, it's like I think that you would agree with this, Todd. It's like, if there's no gap between where somebody is and where they want to be, you don't have anything to input into. Right. And so part of the whole thing that as I listen to you talking about this, it's like being super clear about what that key deliverable or that key performance result is, so that you have buy-in and so that people can get that that's their accountability in their position. Right. That when you evaluate and you get those KPIs, that feedback about, well, here's where we are now, and here's really where we want to be, that when we have position agreements that are agreed on about those results, now when you start doing training with people, the training is in service to helping them in their position close that gap. So I love that you are making that distinction here, because it is a really important thing. Because a lot of times what happens is, right, I mean, this is where training goes wrong, is that we start by just going, well, talking to people or training them about something without this, for the sake of what are you doing it, without their clarity about their own accountability to that result. Right.
Because it's like,
It
why would you
just
listen?
sound like another good idea, but
Right.
there's not really buy-in. And so in order to get that buy-in, there's got to be that agreement. So I'm going to let you keep going, but I love the direction that you're talking about here.
Because without that, it's like, why should they listen? And part of that, where the next step is, we agree with that to the point that we've got 6 levels, and the first 3 are what we refer to as like service tech levels, and then we're kind of getting into superstar levels in 4 through 6. And I'm not using those words. That's actually not how we define them. But the 4th through the 6th tech levels are tend to be guys who have elevated their career to the point where if they're a technician, they also now have the ability to talk about hiring conversion items. But it gives them something to look forward to.
Sure.
And obviously, once you hit a level 6, then you need to have another level to go after because everybody wants constant accomplishment. But it's what made me, when you were talking, and I think about this with our training, I was thinking about it like a movie. When we go to watch a movie and we give a movie a couple hours of our time, we know what we're going for, whether that's to be thrilled or to laugh or to get caught up in the story. Like I'm looking forward to going and seeing Star Wars, right? And I've got all these things I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to the action, but more of what I'm looking forward to anything else is the mystery. What mysteries am I going to get answers to in this saga? So that's what's exciting to me, and I guarantee it's what's exciting to a lot of people. A lot of times people go into training, they don't know why.
Right.
It's like the manager threw them on a bus and said, we're going to go watch a movie, and they never told them what the movie was. So they go into it, haven't even yet decided that they want to see it. Most of the time they don't. Look, I don't want to go see that movie. You're going to take me to a French black and white movie with something? I don't want to see that. So they got to see this training as an event that has some benefit, if not directly connected to their income and outcomes, directed back to this core value. Because this is what we can measure, but this is what we feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always back to these 2 things. And then the last part of what I would say is you got to get into a real rhythm. That's really important. And for me, that rhythm is about doing something with consistency. And a lot of times when people start getting into their training, they get worried about not being the perfect trainer. I'm not a trainer. We hear that all the time. I'm not a trainer. That's fine. You don't have to be a trainer. The reality of it is that good training is not about the person on stage. It's about the person getting it.
And it's not about being perfect.
No.
Right. Yeah. It's about how do you disseminate information in a useful way, understanding who you're talking to, where you're starting out from.
Exactly. It's just getting them the information. So what I would say is don't wait to start. Even if you're wanting to hire a professional training company, okay, great, but don't wait to start. Establish a rhythm. Meeting every day at 7, and in the beginning, maybe all you can manage is 15 minutes. I can do every Tuesday at 7 for 15 minutes. Maybe I can add time to that down the road once I get more comfortable. Great. Then pick 1 day a week and establish a rhythm and make it easy on yourself. Don't, in the beginning, try to overcomplicate it and do what we would do, which is, we take 4 hours to craft out a 1-hour presentation. But that's because we're professional trainers. I wouldn't think that anyone should do that without knowing what they were doing. They're probably going to mess something up. Mm-hmm. So instead, keep it simple.
I like that because one of the things that I have found for myself in my business, and I have seen other people in their business, that some of the practices of success in a business is the ability to plan for, being intentional about some of those things that are working on your business or working, or training in your business. Or for me, it was like when I wrote the book, I had to plan out time every single solitary week for these allotted amounts of time, because if I didn't, and if I don't do the same thing for marketing, and if I don't do, like in different areas, if I don't be intentional about setting aside that time, there's never time left over. Well, I'll get to it when I can, or we'll fit it in someplace. So I appreciate what you're saying, is just how do we be intentional about it and be consistent with it? Because the whole thing of being able to get people's minds to think differently requires that consistency.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next time I do this, Vicki, I'm going to do the A before the D, and I'm going to call this the Radder system.
I like it.
That's because people don't care about acronyms unless you're trainers. Trainers love acronyms. But I think that's it. I mean, are there more things to it? Sure, but don't complicate it.
Right.
Have a reason. Have defined agreements. I like that term.
Mm-hmm.
Have a system of accountability where you track what your expectations are and you report them. And I could talk about how to do that the right way and the wrong way, but then a rhythm, just get consistent.
Right.
Don't worry about it being perfect. Make it short, make it easy, and then build as you get better at it.
Mm-hmm. So is this a good time? Because it seems like a good time to segue to actually my next question, which is, sure. And you just started to touch on this of, so if I'm a company that wants to implement a training program within my business, and I hear the part about being consistent and having a set side of time and doing it regularly. Mm-hmm. How do I go about? So I appreciate what you said. Is like, it doesn't have to be some very complicated thing. So what is a way for, let's say that I'm going to be training my foreman, and I'm training my foreman to improve on their XYZ skills. Maybe it's 2-week look ahead skills. And then maybe it's, material management. Maybe it's subcontract scheduling. Like maybe there's a whole series of things that I want to train my foreman on over the next 6 months. How do I go? How would you recommend that I go about creating? I'm going to ask you about curriculum in a minute, but just sure. For just the structure of it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to erase this. So this is an exercise in our program that we have called the Manager Series. There's a section in there where we actually talk about how do you build out, a training lesson. And the idea is that you haven't hired us and you're doing it on your own. And you're not a professional trainer. So we want to keep it really simple. So we go back, and the things that we've already established, we got a consistent date and time. No worries. We know it's every day at 7 to 7:30. It's like, okay, great. We always remind them to go back and say, hey, what's the core reason? Because that's going to open up your conversation. And then you go to the topic. So if the topic is, let's say it's service agreements. We got service agreements here. If we remember our core reason, then what we're going to do is we're going to launch with that core reason. And that core reason is going to connect to what service agreements do.
So it's for the sake of, you're first establishing, for the sake of what are we doing this training, like why is it important? So it reconnects them with their position agreement, the results, what's, for the sake of what are we doing this? Yep, great.
And if you think about that from a company position, that becomes real easy, right? And so I'll give you a perfect example. This was actually at the air conditioning company that I was a minority partner with here in Austin. We found our core reason around service agreements when a lady denied one of our repairs, and a couple weeks later, her house literally burnt down, and it was on a disconnect. It was a disconnect that was hot to the touch. We had all the documentation and proof. So she called. It was on a Sunday. I answered the phone. I will never forget this. And I was scared because she's blaming us. And I'm going, oh, my gosh. And I'm like, hang on a second, ma'am. I can hear the sirens in the background. Literally, I can hear the firemen and the police officers talking. And I'm terrified. I'm like, oh, great. First year in business. This will be what will shut us down. I open up the computer, and I'm looking through the notes. And I'm like, oh, such relief. Our technician, Chris, was out there. He had explained it. He explained it well. He had the documentation where he explained it to her. She denied doing the repair. He shared with her why it was important that he left it in the off position. Of course, she can turn it back on if she wanted to. It wasn't heat. It was an air conditioning system. But he had her sign off that she would agree that she understood it could be potentially dangerous. It's like, okay. Well, when I read that, I was able to pull up the paperwork and I was able to review that with her. And I said, ma'am, do you remember this? Yes. Well, I've got the paperwork here. I'm happy to send it to you. But when you show that to your insurance company, they're probably going to deny your claims because you were aware of it. She hung up the phone, never called back.
Wow. Wow.
The next, like literally hung up the phone as soon as I offered to send her paperwork because she was there with the ambulances and an insurance claim and she didn't want proof of the record. Well, she never called back. I didn't pursue it. Obviously, nothing to defend against ourselves. But when we went into our training that week, I brought that paperwork up. I told them the story. And I said, guys, this is why we do service agreements. This is why we communicate safety. And then I had the old paperwork, and I pulled up a lot of other disconnects that hadn't been sold. We had a conversation about it. We followed up because that really happened. And that's not a scare tactic. That's a wake-up call.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Everybody's going, whoa, wait a minute. I thought these stories only happened in training sessions. It happened in real life to one of our techs. He got to stand up and tell the story. And our service agreement conversions went through the roof.
Wow.
And our offerings for disconnects, with a lot of people going, that, $387 for disconnect, it's almost 10 years ago, is nothing compared to the side of your house catching on fire.
So isn't that interesting? Because a lot of times we think about training people so that we're not losing money or so that we can increase efficiency. What you just described is a beautiful example of how training people and investing in that time and having them be clear about, for the sake of what are you doing it, can actually add dollars to your bottom line, because the people who are out there in a job representing your company are going to be able to be better equipped at being able to tell stories and to upsell things that really, and not like in a slimy way upsell, but like really literally upsell services that will be of benefit to the customer.
Right.
And here's what I like about that too, Todd, is that you just gave them a story to be able to tell that's a real life situation that they can then share, and that the story is the thing that communicates the message to the client, as opposed to them to feel like, here, I'm a tech and I don't like to sell. Well, you're not selling anything. You are simply providing service and educating your client about the potential risks,
right,
so that your client can make a decision about what's best for them. So
well, and that's one of our little secret sauces.
Oh, okay. Number two, stories. Yeah, I love stories.
And because that's how people ultimately communicate the best. It's in our literal DNA. When we hear a story, we stop and we listen.
Yes.
We want to hear a story. We want to hear a story with names. We want to hear a story with dates. We want to know what happened to that little old lady. The answer is, I don't know. She didn't call us back, and, we didn't follow up on it immediately afterwards. I don't know what happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something fun in mystery too, right? But you start with your core reasons. And if you start with your core reasons, then your secret sauce to it is, where's the story?
Mm-hmm.
When has this changed someone's life, or when has it led up to your core reason? Then, now that you got my attention and I'm listening, then we do our demonstration, or our how-to example, if you will. And the thing is, right, no service tech loves to role play, and I don't blame them. But why don't we practice a little bit? Even though I might use that word role play sometimes by accident, but we go into practice. We let the guys practice in a group, and then we wrap it up with some sort of challenge. Every man likes to be challenged. Every woman likes to be challenged. Challenges are fun. Let's see who can be number one. Go forth and do.
So give me an
literally,
example.
if you can
Give me an
right.
example. So I like that. So just, if you'll repeat those again, just go through them one at a time. Just repeat it, and then when you get to challenge, give me an example of challenge.
You got it. Core reason. Tie in a story that emphasizes your core reason. Demo it, or how to. In other words, as the leader, show folks how to do what you expect them to do. You can document that in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let them practice it now. And at the end of it, let's do a little challenge. So the challenge would be along the lines of, all right, great guys. Boom, we had a great training session today. I got a challenge for you. My challenge is for each and every single one of you to convert at least one club membership today, all right? Now, if I were to put that into expectation, you've all got 4 calls today. So we're only talking about 1 out of 4. Now we know our buddy Terry over there at Air Now. You guys have all met Terry. They're at 67% as a company. Hey, we'll get there. But I'll tell you what, let's all get at least 1. And the person that gets the most today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash their truck for them on truck wash day. You won't even have to do it. I'll do it for you. Okay. So the person that gets the most service agreements today, I'll wash their truck. So a fun little challenge like that.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And
That's great.
You could do any sort of thing. What I would tell you about challenges is don't make them too far out.
Okay.
Don't make them
that
a
makes
year
sense.
long. They fail.
Yeah, quick and close. Okay, good. So, that what you just described is how do you set up the framework for doing training? Now, can we dig into this? I think it's number 3, which is the demo. So, if somebody is developing the actual curriculum, what are like some key points about? What do they like? Maybe even just do you have a checklist or like here's the things that you want to hit on, like some kind of a framework that you can share with people about how to develop that actual training part?
And again, we don't want to make this complicated. We want to make this really simple. So we go through just a couple of things when it comes to presenting. And I really love the 3 tells. Maybe you've heard this before, but the 3 tells are: tell them what you're going to tell them. It's a summary.
Tell them
what you're going to tell them. Tell them. So that's where you give them the features and the benefits. And then tell them what you told them. And so for me, that and for anybody, that's an easy way to kind of get caught up in the, what's my rhythm. And then the other thing, and I'll give you a little bite. I'll give you a little demonstration of this. The other thing is we like to tell the guys to focus on benefits, not so much features. And the difference between the two perfect example, the feature of this marker is that it writes. That's the feature. That's what it does. Mm-hmm. So does this pen. The benefit of this marker over this pen is that it writes on this whiteboard and it's big enough that you can read it. This doesn't write on the whiteboard and it's not big enough that you can read it. So often when you're talking about your benefits, your real value in your benefit is found in what's different than what their expectation is. And maybe they have a comparison, or maybe you're painting the picture for the first time. And just about any presentation can be done in this sort of manner.
Okay.
Takes a little practice. Obviously, Vicki, I know it's like what they say. It's like, I can't play a guitar. But if I were an expert at playing a guitar, I'd make it look easy enough to where everybody would go, anyone can do it.
Yeah, right.
I know I'm flowing through this. I've been doing this my whole professional career since 21. But what I would say is any of you guys can do it. It may not be as fluid. You might stumble. You might get really hot in the cheeks. You might embarrass yourself. Hey, that's just part of the game.
Yeah, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. Yeah. Sure.
You'll get good.
This has been awesome, Todd. And I think that you've provided people with a lot of really great information about how to think about sort of the big picture of doing training with their team, how to develop a training program and a structure for it, and then how to develop curriculum. So thank you. Thank you. Super helpful. And I know that you said that you have well, I guess 2 questions. One is,
all right,
is there anything that you would add quickly that I haven't, that we haven't touched on here? And then 2, can you tell people about the resource that you have for them that can help them as they move forward in developing training systems and programs in their company?
Yeah, so I would say a couple things. One is I would say I absolutely have faith that anyone listening to this can do it on their own. They can figure it out. And doing something is better than doing nothing.
Right.
Period. What I would add to that, though, is that, if you're considering a training company, I think the primary reason that you should do it has to do primarily with the amount of time that it would save you. For a long time in even my early business career, even after I was a business coach, when I started this company and my resources were limited, I defaulted to doing a lot of things myself. I built my own website and it wasn't pretty. And, I did that because I was convincing myself it was the smartest way to allocate my, limited resources. What I have learned after growing a team is that almost anybody that does what they do daily for a living, whether they're building websites or installing air conditioning systems, it doesn't matter if I'm smart enough to figure it out. I don't have the time to pour into it, to do it as quickly or as good as they can. And if I were putting that same energy into growing this business, I would make more money than what it costs me to invest in a professional. So what I would say is I understand wherever you're at. I mean, that's why we give away everything for free. And some of you are at that critical point where you just literally can't do it any other way. But if you can, even if it financially hurts a little bit, hire people like Vicky, hire people like me, hire implementers that can come in and get your accounting set up and make sure it's running properly. And it may cost you a couple $1,000s, but the time it'll save you will allow you to motivate your team and go sell air conditioning or plumbing or electrical or roofing. And that will always make you more money. So there's my final tip is if you can, and you probably can, if you evaluate what your time is worth, get other people to do the lifting that you're not great at.
Great. Thank you. Good. Mm-hmm. And what's the free resource that you have for people?
Oh my gosh, so many.
Well, the one that we talked about.
I know. I'm gonna talk about that one. If you guys will go and check out the Disc Profiles free resource, it's an infographic, and it covers the 4 primary personality types. That's a huge part of what we do here at training. And on this infographic, it's going to tell you how to identify the 4 personality types. It'll tell you what's important to them, how they set goals, which is good because really quickly you'll be able to go, oh, I have that person on my team. And this is all very important, but we go back to the core reason. One of the great things about having this tool is it'll kind of help you understand what's important to them. They'll find their own reason inside of your reason. And then you can start telling stories to them. And by the way, even in that story that I told earlier, for the people that are like the high, what we call stables, they're hearing that story and they're thinking about all the Mrs. Smiths that they're not going to have their homes burned down anymore. And that's touching their heart. If you think about the people that we call the high compliance, they're thinking how this is going to make sure that things are done technically correct. And that's the only way it should be done. They don't care that Mrs. Smith's house burnt down. They're more offended by the fact that it wasn't installed properly. If you're thinking about the high influencers, they love the story because now they got a story to tell, and that just gets them excited, and they look forward to being the center of the stage. And you think about the high Ds, now the D has a reason to make sure this person does what they say. So everybody filters these stories in their brain, and it's important that you know that because you will try to do the same thing if you're not careful. If you're a high S, you'll be like, why aren't you worried about Mrs. Smith? Yeah. Well, the reality of it is they're worried about doing the job well because they're a high C, and it's okay because it still ties into the core value, but they hear it differently than you do.
Yeah. So in a part of what I appreciate about what you're saying too, Todd, is that when we can understand that not everybody is like us and that different people have different ways of bringing value, meaning, and purpose to their lives, and hear things with a different emphasis than we do, unless it's somebody else with our same personality profile. Exactly. That the DISC profile and understanding those things can really help you communicate the training that you're doing with somebody or the developing of your team at the level that they can hear it. And you don't have to be, you don't have to be a DISC assessment or a personality trait assessment expert. You simply have to understand that there's certain key words at times that will communicate the message most powerfully and impactfully to the person that you're working with. So I like that. So that's great. So I'm going to put a URL, link to that URL to that download here in the blog and as well as here on the video so that people can go get it. And can you just tell people a little bit about your podcast too?
Yeah,
Because in addition to like doing this awesome training that you do, this is actually how I got connected with Todd, was from his podcast. So maybe just speak about that for a minute too, because I think it's a great podcast.
well, thank you. We have the Service Contractor radio show, and it is a mix of myself and Chris Elmore, and Chris Loudermilk's on there a lot. And I could even bring some of my podcasting gear, and if you want, we'll put it right back over here. But the podcast is a lot of what we do to go back to that original mission. Our mission is how can we help create radical transformation, period. So when I was starting this, one of the things that I kept asking myself was, how can I help people? And I know that seems almost too good to be true, but I had a chance to talk to a guy named Seth Godin. Have you ever heard of Seth, Vicki?
Yes, I think we all have heard of Seth Godin.
Well, I want to tell you something about Seth. He is amazingly generous, more so generous than you would ever imagine. I wrote him an email, and I thought there's no way this guy's going to write me back. And I remember exactly where I was because I was blown away. I was on an elliptical machine at the YMCA. I wrote him an email, and within about 15 minutes, he wrote me back. I was still on the elliptical machine. I'm like, is this really him? I thought maybe it was one of those automated things. Mm-hmm. And I just briefly told him what I was doing, and I was a big fan. And he wrote me back and said, my advice for you is to give it all away. Don't try to keep anything to yourself. And in the email, he went on to say that, I can't give it all away fast enough because there's only so many words a day I can put out. There's only so many videos I can put out. And if you're really trying to impact people, don't do a business of secrets. And we don't.
That's awesome.
We're not a business of secrets. We are a training and consulting company, and we're not a guru on a mountain. You don't have to come see us on the mountaintop and spend more energy and money to find out what we know.
Nice.
Our philosophy has always been, we're going to give it away, Vicki. And if people want to pay us, it's because they want a connection with us, and they want something more that they can't get for free. So the last 8 years has been literally the way I'm going to reach people is I'm going to give it away.
Nice.
So
right. Well, we here at Suitor Business Builders take that same philosophy, and I am continually doing that same thing because I share that philosophy and that belief as well. So, and if people want to know more about you and your training programs, Todd, can you tell them how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, that'd be great. It's Todd at the word serve, just like you would spell it out, and then XTRA, Todd at serveextra.com. Shoot me an email. Our office number is 512-333-4133. And if you want to do a little bit of research without a conversation, just check out the website. There's so much good information there. And if you get interested, get a free strategy session. We'll spend 30 minutes with you talking about your business, breaking it down, giving you some great tips, and talk to you about how we could help you out if you're interested.
Awesome. And it's serveextra.com. Todd, thank you. This has been really wonderful. I so appreciate you sharing your time and your talent with our listeners and our viewers.
It's my pleasure.
And thank you. And for everybody who's listening and watching, I highly encourage you to go check out Todd's website and those free resources. And I wish you all of the best as you go forth and are training and working with your team. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Todd.
Thank you.
I hope you found today's video helpful. If you're ready to take your next step in your leadership journey and to build a great contracting business, I encourage you to check out my book, The Profit Bleed. It's full of great tools and resources that will help you implement the processes and the systems and the structure that will allow you to build a more profitable business, allow you to work less hours, and help you reclaim the joy and fun in your business and in your life again. And for a limited time, you can get my book for free. All you have to do is pay $7.95 shipping and handling. And you simply need to go to theprofitbleed.com/free. Thanks again for joining me for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on The Profit Builder.